Okay, that's fabulous. Well, we're recording, so to those of you in the Diamond Light community who've actually had the opportunity to come in and join us today, I want to say a very, very big welcome to Dr. Carl-Johan Calleman, author of the book, The Nine Waves of Creation, which has been a seminal work that many of us have actually enjoyed on our journey through the Masters of Destiny. Very much enjoyed it, Carl. For those of you that don't know, Carl is actually a scientist with a distinguished career in toxicology. As a biologist for many years, that was his initial career. And from 1979 became fascinated and immersed in the principles and concepts of the Mayan timekeeping systems, which is where the information and insights started, I think, rolling out in respect of the nine waves. So, Carl, amazing work. So I'd like you, if you can, to perhaps expand on that a little bit for our community in your own way. And what was it that really fascinated you so much when you connected with the Mayan timekeeping system that pulled you forward from there?
Oh, okay. Thank you, Julie. It's very nice to be on this call. I like the fact that we are a limited group, and maybe we'll have participation of several of your associates. Yes, I might start with that, and thank you again for inviting me.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, I went to Mexico in 1979. I was 29 years old, and I was still a graduate student at the University of Stockholm, which is a, very, you might say, scientific, rationalistic world of science. And for some reason, I was called, you might say, or felt very strongly I should go to Mexico. And in times when it wasn't as easy as it is today, and everything was not connected through the internet and so forth, and unbeknownst to myself, I ended up in Mexico City in the middle of the night when it was the Day of the Dead. And
wow.
That if I would have known, it would probably not have been that powerful an experience. But I'm coming there from my lab in a couple of days earlier, and then see the skeletons hanging from the light poles and everything, and I soon realized that this is another kind of a world where with different kinds of values, and where the spirit and the souls have a significant place in people's life. And I really very much loved Mexican culture, and I still do. I'm actually back from Mexico only 1 week ago now, and 2 weeks ago, I'm sorry. And but being there, I just felt that this was sort of my spiritual home, and I think it still is. And it wasn't just one incident that created that experience. It was the whole colorful society. But then I realized that there was something special also about the Mayan traditions, and I couldn't say exactly what it was, but it was enough for me to sense that this is probably where I will find the purpose of my life in a deeper sense. And for the first time, I actually came to realize that there was a purpose to my life that wasn't just something I had ended up accidentally in this physical body, so to speak. And that's the beginning of a long life history, you might say. And I think 13 years later, I abandoned my previous career essentially, and focused on the Mayan science, as I'd like to say. The reason I say that now, Mayan science rather than a calendar, is that calendar is a little bit misleading, because we tend to think of that in completely different ways than the ancient Maya would do. So that's how it started. And well, I should add also, though, that it wasn't like I came there and felt that, oh, this is interesting, this is interesting, this is interesting. That might have been the case, but the point is that I really feel that this is a mission that I was born with. And then that gradually would unfold, and this just became going to Mexico at that time just became the sort of the triggering point, something that led me into what I was probably meant to do all along.
I know when you have that call, and there is absolutely no mistaking it. And I fully relate to that. It was sort of my call to come back to the UK from growing up in South Africa in a scientific corporate career. And what unfolded was my work that was the unfolding diamond consciousness, which began long before it became something also that many other people were able to link into or relate to. So yes, I well understand that calling, as do I think a lot of other people on the call. And it's fascinating. It becomes something that you cannot not do.
Right.
My favorite expression.
You can't betray your mission, so to speak.
No, you can't, no matter what the circumstances. So Carl, some of the individuals on the call today have been through the program where we've really explored your book in depth, and we've gone into the understanding and the relationships and the types of patternings that we may be able to recognize as a consequence of all 9 waves. So I know I've heard you on previous calls actually doing a brief summary, which is just absolutely perfect, of the 9 waves of creation. So I'd love for you, if you can, to just give an overview of the 9 waves for those who are not familiar with it. Because what I'd like to focus on, if possible, is some of the manifestations and some of the ways and some of the challenges that people might be experiencing in respect of establishing a resonance with the 9th wave. And of course, your upcoming book and some of that information as well, which is fascinating. So if we can just sort of sketch an overview of the 9 waves for those of them who are not familiar. And if people want any more, then I would highly, highly recommend that they read your book.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, well, as I said, I was down in Mexico quite recently, and one of the things I did was to visit a site that's called Mayapan, which is a lesser known site, and I went in there early in the morning, and I was the only person for about half an hour, which is an enormous privilege, you might say. And this is really probably the last site that the Maya built, like a sacred site that they built. And in the center of this is a 9-storied pyramid. And that's something you will find also in the more famous Mayan sites like Palenque, Chichen Itza, and Tikal, that in a central location there is a 9-storied pyramid. And it's quite consistent. You don't have 10-storied pyramids, you don't have 11-storied pyramids. And you may look upon that as a metaphor for the entire creation, as I see it, which happens in a number of quantum steps, is what I would also like to say. Each of these levels, you could call it 9 terraces, or 9 levels, or what you would like, but as I have come to interpret it, it means 9 states of consciousness. It's we basically human beings, we're downloading these states of consciousness. And the fact that it's a climb, like in ancient times, the Mayan kings, they would climb these pyramids, and they would do that as a means of symbolically enacting the universal evolution scheme, going to higher and higher levels. And then my work has really been to try to elucidate what exactly do these levels mean? What kind of phenomena do they carry? And I think it's quite clear that they all start with some major new introduction, like a quantum shift that brings new phenomena into existence. And it all starts with the beginning of the universe, also as we understand it from the perspective of modern science, as the so-called Big Bang. It's sort of just an opening out of nothing, and nobody will really be able to fathom exactly what that means. But time-wise, we can say that this fits with the beginning of this climb of the pyramid. And then you might say there are 4 levels that essentially brings the evolution of our biological species about stepwise. And then comes these the 5th, the 6th, the 7th, 8th, and 9th waves that are all bringing, you might say, different structures to the human mind. And when we download these structures, these geometric structures, as I would prefer to call them, we will start to think along the lines that those geometric structures call upon us to do. So, for instance, the 6th wave, which is really what's called the long count by Mayan archaeologists, and it basically started 5,000 years ago, and it led to the fact that people downloaded a mind of duality, you might say, a geometric structure that helped people create civilization, but it also, as part of that, it also created the separation in left and right brain halves, and created a culture in human beings that was essentially about dominance, of patriarchal dominance. And because the duality that people were downloaded from this wave led people into a certain mindset, a certain way of being, and so forth. And then other levels have been added to that. The 7th level, the 7th wave, these are all quantum states, and meaning that they are carried by waves. And the 7th wave then basically came with the Industrial Revolution, or it brought the Industrial Revolution about 250 years ago. The shift in the mind that people downloaded from the center of the cosmos led people to create a new world, a world of industry of matter and control of matter and so forth. And then came the 8th wave, which was activated in 1999, and it created essentially this world of digitalization that we are so much getting into at this current time. And then in 2011, on top of all of these waves, came a new mind, which really wasn't a dualist mind, the 9th wave. And that is a wave then that creates a new possibility for humankind to add a path towards unity, a path towards light. And a lot of people are finding tools, as I know your community are doing, in order to support a path along those lines. So What I guess all I need to add to this is to point out that I don't think it is like that we go into a ninth level and then everything else is being cut off. Rather, all the levels are built on top of each other, and we embody all of these levels. But but what is happening as a possibility, at least at the current time, is that this ninth wave that brings back the unity consciousness to humanity, it will, to the extent that we develop resonance with it and live our lives in according to that path, we will, our main focus will become to be diamond people or light people, and then we will still keep these lower levels that created our bodies, our rational ways of thinking, etc., etc. But my vision is that this light, the unity consciousness, is what will become dominating and will take over, that we will be coming from when we relate to everything that our whole being is made up of, which includes a lot from other lower levels as well.
Absolutely. I mean, in total resonance with everything that you're saying there, Carl. And also what was fascinating for me, I think, working through your book and with the knowledge that I'd actually picked up along the way as well, is the fact that they are identifiable, scientifically identifiable by archaeologists, cycles of evolution, times whereby, sort of new life and diversification actually becomes prominent, and then cycles of extinction when species disappear, sort of these quantum leaps that they call, I know you know, they call it punctuated equilibrium, I think, sort of where life is the same for a period of time and suddenly everything changes. And a lot of these cycles, as I discovered when we were looking at the ninth waves, actually overlap the time frames that actually go along with the nine waves concept with some of the earlier waves. And it is said, in fact, that there are a number of cycles that are actually converging at the moment, where this necessity, or we are ripe for a quantum shift in the evolution and the biological, mental, spiritual evolution of all life. So it's not just human life, it's all life upon the planet that is actually being impacted by the waves. So that, I think, is just a beautiful follow through and something that we can map onto the nine waves. One of the things that I think was an interesting concept, and I just wanted to ask you, is that the way that we see it and we worked with it is the fifth wave was an unfiltered, and those were all of the ancient First Nation peoples who had that innate connection with the divine realms, with everything beyond. We then went through a period of evolution, but they have actually held that ancient wisdom. The ninth wave brings us back to that ancient wisdom, but with the capacity now, the growing capacity through the ninth wave to be able to apply it within the context and the framework of our modern world and modern culture. So to me, what we're doing is we're bridging the ninth and the fifth waves to create something new. So it's not that you get interested in shamanism and you need to go and live in a teepee and do it the way that they did in the fifth wave times. It's bringing that wisdom forward and being able to access a much higher perspective, so that embodiment brings new creation in service to humanity at this time. Does that?
Wonderful.
Yeah. Okay.
Wonderful. Absolutely.
Yeah, that makes sense. One of the things that I think you mentioned was that, that was the other question I wanted to ask you. Because the fifth wavers and the ancient peoples actually had access to that divine infrastructure, sort of all of the dimensions, realms. I mean, there's some fundamental, very powerful wisdoms from the ancient teachers, is that all nine waves already existed. Our journey through that consciousness is perceived as more linear because of the cycles of time, because this concept of the nine, where we were going with this is that they had to have understood the concept of the nine and had some relationship to this idea that all nine ways were there to have built the pyramids with the 9 steps and to have encoded that information in their teaching.
Mm-hmm.
So would you say that's correct, that all 9 waves were always in existence?
No, I don't believe that.
Don't you?
I've heard that proposed before. I think, however, that somehow, if you go back to people in ancient peoples, they were, from what we have any recorded history then, they were a little bit in an interference between the completely floating unity state of shamanic unity consciousness of the 5th wave, and at the same time they were going into this structured 6th wave consciousness, and that means that they probably had the capacity to access both of those forms of relating to the world. And the 5th wave, in principle, is a unity consciousness opening up to anything that exists on any spiritual level. Whereas when you introduce the 6th wave, then structure, geometry, mathematics, and so forth comes in. And so they were probably, to them, the 9 levels was probably very much a reality that they could see, but it came out of, as I think, the interference between these 2 waves. And the 9, the number 9, and the idea of 9 worlds is really not just limited to the Maya or the Mexicans or so forth. I mean, in my own native Scandinavia, the people in Viking times used to believe that there were 9 worlds, and you find this number 9 in many different parts in ancient times. What has come though later with the 7th wave especially, and maybe the 8th wave, is to lose the sort of the spiritual aspects of the numbers, and so we don't talk about 9 waves in general in the modern world. We have lost that, but some of us are reconnecting, and that's what you came very well described earlier, that the 9th wave also in certain ways allows us to reconnect with everything that exists. We're limited in that. We're taking steps, cautious steps, you might say, or small steps, but it does allow us to reconnect, and at least based on the kind of verifications that I have provided, it becomes clear that, yeah, they were probably right then, even though we wouldn't just sort of spontaneously download the number 9 from the skies. But it's there, and I think people are increasingly seeing it and starting to see that certain numbers actually have a much deeper meaning than we've in recent history have given them. It's not just a quantitative number, so to speak. It's actually a qualitative number as well.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting though is from the ancient people's perspective is their ability to prophesy and to predict the rolling out of these sequences of time, which have correlated so well with our experiences in this modern day, as well as with your writings and the decoding that you've done in respect of the 9th waves. And I think that's where the question comes from, in respect of, did they always exist, but they were not active? So they were.
That could be. I'm open to that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was a concept, and I don't know if you know of Victor Vernon Woolf. He's a physicist who's done some amazing spiritual teachings, and he works with the concept of holodynamics. So we're working with
Uh-huh.
holograms and everything as a whole. And his hypothesis and the way that he puts things across is that everything that we're experiencing as a challenge upon the earth exists because it is created by its solution, which would kind of seem to
Uh-huh.
imply that everything that we need is already there. A la the ninth wave, we just need to establish the resonance with it so that we can then embody and bring the solutions
Yeah.
into being to solve the world's problems. But we couldn't do it unless we've taken the journey
Yeah.
through the waves. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, these are
That's
just things that we were exploring.
yeah. Good. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Wisely said. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. And so the Khoisan people, we only discovered, just out of interest, because I've been working with the Diamond Light community since it was founded in 2007. My work with the Diamond Energy and the Understanding began in 2004. It was only in 2017, I think, that we connected with the principles of the ninth wave. It was something that came into our awareness, and I did a group facilitation where we connected with a ceremony that was being held in South Africa. I think it was the 64th day of the ninth wave at that time, that was with the Khoisan peoples.
Yeah, I to be honest with you, I don't exactly remember the reason but I do remember the event, and I think it was a moving event,
Yeah.
and very much so, and it was, just a great honor to have the Khoisan participate in, and give their participation in that. Um, that's all
Yeah.
I can say.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that they are coming from a completely different place compared to myself, but I very much honor the fact, just because I have a feeling that they will really tune into a larger cosmic space than I would normally do myself.
Yeah. I was just wondering if you might have some insight into Sean Caulfield, who we know is a very proud supporter of all of your
Yeah.
work, and he works closely with the Khoisan. That
Yeah.
he has said that there is a genetic importance or value to the Khoisan people as the most ancient of the first peoples that are still holding that original fifth wave energy upon the planet. So they're helping us to bridge into the ninth wave. That was
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of the anthropologists would say that basically their culture goes back almost 100,000 years, or certainly it may be the most ancient living culture on our planet, and that's I can only quote what some anthropologists would be saying about this.
Thank you, Carl. Rachel's just put her comments in the chat room to say it was a very powerful gathering when we did that remotely. She says, I've never forgotten hearing that we were, and this was really interesting. She heard during that ceremony that we did that we are the ancestors from the future.
Yes.
So preparing the ground. So it was a beautiful experience that we had during that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Carl. The probably more of personal interest to me, because I actually find that there's a huge alignment with some of the specific demarcated days in the Tolkien, with some of the work that we do. How do you view the Mayan 260-day Tolkien as a sort of in conjunction with the nine waves?
Yeah, well, first of all, it is connected. That's a very important thing to see, that there are certain patterns that will appear when you are looking at every day and looking at the place that it has in the ninth wave, and look at the same time at what is the Tzolk'in energy that is of that particular day. And you know, I pay attention to the Tzolk'in sometimes. I do think that your date of birth in the Tzolk'in, or the sign of birth, is a meaningful phenomena, that it actually does capture the essence of that particular day. Now, I think also, however, that the Tzolk'in has come to, in modern times, come to have a exaggerated role among people interested in the Mayan calendar. If you go to the ancient sites and look at the dates that they have, you know, they have almost like a listing of different calendars where they place a particular day in all of these different calendars, meaning that it's really a multi-dimensional calendar system. Each of these placements in a wave will give some kind of a color to the particular day. It will add to the dimensionality of each for any particular day. But what I was going to say here is that the Tzolk'in is not at the top of this list. It's rather at the bottom of it. And so I'm absolutely saying that, yes, this is a true capturing of the dates, but it wasn't that important in ancient times. And that's something that I'm always trying to find out. What did the Maya look upon these different waves and calendars in ancient times? Because I know that as consciousness has changed from our planet as a result of these shifting waves, that has affected also the Maya and their descendants, and so they don't no longer have this long list of different calendar systems. So what I want to say then is that both the ninth wave, or all of the nine waves, and the Tzolk'in are true, and the Tzolk'in is like a matrix. It's like a pattern of changing light, or something like that, if you like to say that. But there is, in terms of its importance, there is a difference, because the Tzolk'in of 260 days is a identically repeated cycle. And so it's not really going anywhere. It's a matrix, and it has value as a matrix. But to follow it will just lead you into a repeated cycle. And that's different from the ninth wave, because the ninth wave, you know, it's not just a repeated cycle. It's a wave where each peak, if you like, and we're right now at a fairly top of the peak, so to speak, each peak brings a new and deepened expression of the kind of quantum state that this particular wave is bringing. And so, you know, if somebody asks me what should they do in order to align themselves with the cosmic plan, then I would absolutely say follow the ninth wave, because that going up and down with this wave will deepen your own understanding of where the cosmic plan is meant to take us. And it will deepen as you familiarize yourself with the effects that this ninth wave will have on your on your personal life. You will also learn more about what it means exactly to you. I mean, the ninth wave is sort of more like a tool for us all to collectively synchronize with the goal of manifesting the cosmic plan. But each of us have distinct roles in the manifestation of these plans. And this we can only, how to so there is somewhat of a dilemma. Most people would just think of themselves as being isolated in their path or so. But the ninth wave, the following of that, will help you align whatever it is you're doing, or your particular role or mission and so forth, to help you go along towards what is the collective cosmic plan of humanity. So I do think there is a difference in the roles that the Tzolk'in will have compared to the role that the ninth wave or any of the other waves will have, in the sense that in principle the Tzolk'in is a repeated 260-day cycle, and basically identically repeated.
Okay, thank you for that, Carl. It's just been intriguing, I think, and it's also, you know, the influence of Jose Arguelles on the Tzolk'in as well, with the so-called gap days, because we have found that when we've been called as a community together to undertake some specific energy processes, there's usually a gap day or some heightened energetic influence that has drawn us towards that day.
Yeah.
And then we find that there's an alignment with wherever the ninth wave is, as well as the energetic signature and influence that's present in the Tzolk'in. So I guess it is kind of like looking at both, because it is something that I maintain the awareness of.
Yeah.
And what you're saying makes perfect sense.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. In respect of the ninth wave, which we know it's the unification wave, it's the wave that's actually going to bring us into a higher state of consciousness where we do play out our personal role in service to humanity. I think the figure that was indicated in respect of humanity at the moment, is in your book, is about 1% that are currently in resonance with the ninth wave. Would that be correct? Is that still a feeling that you have as an estimate, that it's a very, very small percentage of the population that are in alignment with that?
Well, you know, I think it's a very, very small percentage that is consciously aligned with it. I think there is a lot of people that are finding different ways towards unity consciousness in their own ways. And there might be many types of paths like that I'm not aware of. What surprises me in a sense is that so few people seems to be wondering about the fact that this is happening now in our own particular time, as if it would just be an accident that we stumbled upon whatever path towards unity consciousness. I mean, if you go back 70 years, which is roughly my lifetime, nobody was thinking about a path towards oneness, or even the word oneness wasn't there. A path towards light you would be very hard pressed to find anybody doing that. And the reason is really that they were dominated by other quantum states. They were dominated by lower waves of in the nine-storied pyramid, you might say. Now, so I really wish that more people would think about this, give some thought to the fact that today we have many different kinds of groups of practicing different spiritual, more or less effective tools for the path to oneness. That didn't exist, or at least they were very hard to get by if you go back 50 or 70 years in time. So there is a background here. The cosmos has changed. We are at a new level in this quantum activation scheme, if you like. But now, I would hope that more people become aware of the fact that this is something that is planned in the cosmic scheme, and then whatever paths they are following in order to attain what I would call a more elevated state of consciousness, a unity path of some kind, whatever tools they're using, that they would see that this is part of a cosmic plan, and that these 9 waves of creation provides that plan. Because if more people became aware of that, we would, those of us that are having this as a goal and the goal, we would see that we would be much more synchronized in all of our activity, and that would be helpful. You know, it's a big difference for somebody thinking, oh, I'm interested in this path towards oneness, whatever it could be, but I'm doing that as a single individual and nobody in my family understands what it's about, or something like that. It's a big difference from seeing that I want to follow the cosmic plan, which calls upon us to return to unity state. That's how it's all been designed. And that's why I'm looking for these tech methods or practices or whatever that might be to align myself with a diamond light or something else.
Yeah. It's interesting with the diamond light, because my community would know through all of the work that we've done is that there's been, with the investigations and the research, there's been a resonance established as well, or an identification of a number of key biological resonators within the body. And when I talk diamond, I'm talking sacred octahedron. So if one looks at that geometry,
yes,
that geometry manifests itself from the macro level, right at the very fundamental core structure of the universe, right to the fabric of our body.
Yeah.
That it's the oxygen, the blood, and everything that gives us life. So all of that became really meaningful. So this alignment with the diamond light and the 9th wave, to me, is just so powerful in respect of contextualizing, placing a context around everything.
Yes, yes.
So we're working with the 9 waves, and we are very conscious of it. With many in our community. Rachel's actually just said here in the chat room, if I can just ask you, Carl, some people are talking about a cloud or a wave that NASA, a cloud or a wave that NASA has apparently identified to be affecting us. So I don't know if there's a relationship with the 9 waves. My initial response to that is just that we are in a different part of the universe, that it actually, a part of the cosmos, because we're traveling all the time, that it would have an impact, but it's not the 9th wave, because that's at a quantum state. So I don't know if, you have any.
I would agree with that. You know, if this is data actually coming from NASA, which I would really have to look at whether that's the case or not. But if NASA would be able to measure a phenomenon, then we can say fairly certainly that it is not the 9th wave, because the 9th wave is it's a quantum wave and a geometry, I would say, primarily a geometry. And we, at least at the current times, there are no ways of measuring them. We can only see the effects of them as they have played out throughout the course of cosmic evolution. But so far, I've never heard of anybody being able to measure it. The way I look upon it is that, you know, the 9 waves is part of an invisible quantum field, and a quantum field that ultimately our material universe is a reflection of. It's a creation of this invisible underlying field, so I don't think it would be visible directly
Yeah.
If it happens, I'd be interested, but I doubt.
Okay. That's my feeling, though, is that it is perhaps a visible manifestation of a change that is taking place as a consequence of the
Yeah,
quantum.
absolutely. Yeah.
The quantum shift.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've got another question here, Carl, from one of our listeners, and that is, if the 9 waves have occurred consecutively, but I think we kind of did cover some of this, how do we account for the ancient mystics who appeared to be of 9th wave consciousness in their time? And there have been a number of masters where their teachings would appear to align with the concepts and the consciousness of what we're now coming to understand as the 9th wave. Do you think they were of the 9th wave, or do you think that they were something else?
Yeah, I think um, I think there's of something else, and I don't think I will just leave that question
Okay.
for somebody else.
That's okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess what's really important for us at the moment is maintaining an alignment with, and the kind of things that we need to do to align with the 9th wave in a very practical way. So we can follow the wave pattern with the calculators, the wave movements,
Yeah.
that 36-day cycle. We can follow that. And one of the recommendations that I have is, I think people have this assumption that if we've got this new wave of consciousness, it's all going to be love, light, and fairy dust. And somebody's just waving a magic wand, and the 9th wave is going to take us out of all of our troubles, and that's wonderful. So my way of viewing this is really that our work, what is really, really important, is that we have to begin to identify all of the ways in which the previous waves and the programming have also impacted our thinking as we begin to unfold and let go of all of those previous belief systems.
Yes, absolutely.
And that also makes it challenging. I think those are some of the identifiable challenges in respect of aligning with this wonderful unity consciousness wave.
Yeah.
And it's not easy. It's not the easiest thing to do. It is an ongoing process of unfoldment.
Yeah.
So do you have, so that's where we looked at the previous ways, and we've actually done some work, and we're going to be continuing to do that work so that we can maintain the alignment.
Yeah.
What suggestions do you have, recommendations in respect of maintaining that conscious awareness of the patterning and the flow of the 9th wave?
Yeah, first of all, I think you put it wonderfully well, that this is not necessarily an easy path. And the reason is that some of the lower waves, the influence that they have on us, and we've been, throughout our lifetimes, if we're not born very recently, we have been shaped by waves that have essentially other influences than the 9th wave, or even opposite influences than the 9th wave. And so, for instance, then the 6th wave that I talked about, that was initiated 5,000 years ago, and created a real culture of dominance in the world, that some people would be some kind of a kings or nobilities, and they would dominate the slaves and so forth. This is all the product of the duality of the 6th wave. And you can see over the past maybe 200 years or something like that, that this sometimes extreme brutality that kind of a wave actually brought to humanity has increasingly had to give way to more humanitarian ways of being overall. I'm not trying to present a rose garden, so to speak. But overall, that is the case, and we've still faced with this. And people also, depending on their awareness of the cosmic planet, depending on their interest in aligning themselves with the path towards unity and light, they will to different degrees be stuck in the mentalities of the lower waves. But so you do have also at the current time, you have a great reaction that is happening, that a lot of people that just want to stay in that what safe world of duality and dominance that was created by the sixth wave. Now, we're all on this phone call. We are wanting to move in another direction, but we've been shaped very much by especially by the sixth and the seventh waves, and so whatever we do on that path will create resistance on the part of the parts of us that also want to be part of the sixth wave, and so for the reason you also mentioned, this means that this is not an easy path. It's difficult because of the great on a global scale, there is a tremendous power of these lower waves, and few people have reached the understanding or the desire to move towards oneness. It doesn't happen automatically, I think. We first of all, we have to have the intention. We have to say that we want to go in that direction, and we want to lessen the influence of those worlds of dominance that have shaped humanity in the past. So it's difficult because of the world, the way the world looks like, but it's also difficult because of our own personal histories, where this kind of propensity for dominance have shaped our own lives. We might, if you think about it, almost all traumas or a lot of traumas that originate in social interactions, they come out of someone trying to exert dominance over somebody else. That's ultimately what comes out of it, and all kinds of abuses ultimately comes out of that kind of mentality. And so we are faced not only with the fact that we might have been the subjects of such expressions of dominance, but we might also have been expressing it ourselves. We might have tried to dominate others in inappropriate ways and so forth. So that's what that means, is that anyone today who sets the goal of taking the path of returning humanity towards this kind of a light and unity will have to face these things, not only on a global scale in other peoples, but also all the expressions that it's had in ourselves. And that's why, the wave allows us to sort of deal with this step by step, you might say, and the further we immerse ourselves in the wave, we may gradually be able to leave those things behind and become free of these kind of influences. But as you said, this is not an easy thing. It will require work, and finding, as well as finding the appropriate tools for doing it.
Yes, I think that is key, and I think that's what we are working towards at the moment is the establishment of more and more tools that will be effective to support us in doing that. And we know that through the eighth wave we have body works and sort of energy work and all sorts of processes that's actually helping us to clear the way forward.
Yeah.
Carl, would you like to tell us, in fact, I'd like to hear a little bit about your new book,
Yeah.
and how that might have an impact or influence on our understanding or journey towards ninth wave unity.
Yeah. Yeah, so I have a new book coming out in about a month. It's called Quantum Science of Psychedelics. And the subtitle is Pineal Gland, Multidimensional Reality uh, um, and Mayan Cosmology. And it's focused primarily on psychedelics and the kind of effects that they may have. And you might say a background to that is the maybe in the past 10 or 20 years, there's become a tremendous amount of scientific studies that indicate that psychedelics are a useful tool for bringing people out of addictions, from bringing people out of depressions,
Yep.
and several other kinds of conditions, which really means that people are stuck in a rut, those kind of things. And this is, this has, it's almost like when it comes to the psychedelics that it's turned a corner. There are now 3 cities in the United States that has decriminalized it, and there is 100 more that are trying to decriminalize it. And so it's a shift in perception that is taking place. And my book is the purpose of it is to explain how do they work. And but I should say that one of the conclusions that I'm drawing is that there is no fundamental difference between how they work and how a whole range of different meditations and other spiritual practices aiming towards unity consciousness, how they work. And one of the conclusions that I'm drawing is that the effects of psychedelics are not primarily pharmacological, and that's very hard to believe. I'm actually proposing a full explanation to how psychedelics work, and I'm doing that against the background of the Mayan calendar system. And really, what I think they do is that they decompartmentalized this dualist mind that's been created by the 6th wave. And so I'm very happy about this book. It's 350 pages long. I think it really has, it really addresses all forms of healing as we may approach it, because it puts them in a common context, but it is also very much an explanation to exactly how psychedelics work. It also introduces the whole concept of what you might call Mayan quantum science or macrocosmic quantum science. In other words, if you go to established science, it always talks about the quantum theory as the way to describe the nature of matter. It's a theory about the nature of matter. But in the established form, it only deals with the microcosmos, with atoms and photons and all these things that are on a minuscule scale, so to speak. Whereas Mayan quantum science is about the macrocosmos, about our own level, how we as humans are affected by different waves. And so it really, all the things you and I and we have been talking about in this telephone conversation, it comes back there. It's more systematically described, and it, it, and um, yeah, so of course it's 350 pages long, meaning that I can't really cover much.
Condense it into 2 minutes.
To it, right? But I do want to say that it is. I consider it of interest for anyone who is looking to find a path towards unity. I think. Um, Psychedelics may very well be that part of that, and especially then if people have the intention of being part of a collective process towards unity consciousness, as we've been talking about here in this phone call, and it really. I guess, yeah, I should say something else here too when it comes to this book, is that, if you talk about science that is established today, they look upon all the mental phenomena or so forth that human beings produce as a product of their brains, as if our brains were isolated from the reality around us. Now, what you've already seen from the book Nine Waves of Creation, that's not really accurate. Our brains are downloading different perceptions of reality, different ways of perceiving reality, and it's only against that background that I think you can actually understand how psychedelics work, and why it is that they now come with a whole range of studies that have verified that they're very useful against addictions, and against depressions, against obsessive compulsive behavior, probably against eating disorders, and several things. And why would that be? I mean, it doesn't look like it's useful for everything, but it's useful for those particular things where people are stuck in a rut, where people are just, their minds are just repeating their depressions and the reasons to be depressed and so forth. And I think that's really why people are stuck in a rut is essentially that they have downloaded the geometry of the sixth wave that keeps their minds compartmentalized, so that and also keeps that compartmentalization keeps people stuck in a rut. And in order to open themselves to a path to unity, they have to decompartmentalize this world of their inner world of duality. And I try to explain why it is that certain substances that humans may take may actually help this decompartmentalization and bring people out of any kind of destructive ruts they might be in, and so also move on towards the unity consciousness that ultimately we're all meant to go towards.
Thank you, Carl. I'm really looking forward to your new book coming out. I'm going to read it with interest, because I know what I've picked up over the years as well is also this concept of a reset, that it's a neurological, that some of the entheogens used under the proper circumstances, not recreationally,
right,
but used to facilitate shifts in consciousness, can actually support a neurological and a biological reset.
Yes.
In many ways. So I think that's pretty fascinating. If you don't mind, I've got a couple of other questions in the chat room.
Okay.
Carl, before we go.
Yes.
Oh, there you go. It's a lovely way there. So I'm struck by Carl's research, science, and intuition and knowledge without judgment in the energy of the ninth wave. I'm also struck by his generous, clear, and kind way of sharing, as well as the understanding of how everything is in flow, ninth wave embodied. So that's just
Thank you.
a wonderful acknowledgement for you,
Oh, thank
Carl,
you.
an agreement. So there's another question here, which was from Rachel. Do you have an opinion on what seems to be an increase in people connecting with dragons?
With dragons.
Yeah.
Well, to me, the dragon, which is, it was all over as a symbol, but most importantly in imperial China. And in China, it's basically a serpent with 4 legs. That's a very common way in which it was looked upon. So to me, the dragon is the plumed serpent with some little modification. It's really a symbol of the underlying waves that people in ancient times were aware of in a way that we mostly are not aware of today. Unless, I should say, unless we follow the plumed serpent in the form of the 9th wave, because the 9th wave is an expression of the plumed serpent. It's an underlying wave, so to speak. Of course, in Europe, the dragon was more of a negative force. I don't know exactly why that is, but I would it might have to do with Christianity, with the book of Genesis that curses the serpent, whereas in both China and in Mesoamerica and many other cultures as well, the plumed serpent or the dragon, they were honored entities, divine powers that that interact with us in invisible ways.
Thank you. Just if we had to just expand that concept, I would just be intrigued to know what your thoughts and feelings were on this, because I understand this whole dragon wave serpent connection is that there are many people, and I would refer to them more as sort of 8th wave connectors, who connect with dragons from another dimensional entity perspective. From off-planetary other planets, that there are real dragons. So they are the beings, the creator beings, the original creator beings. And it's just interesting that is how they're perceived, because that's the essence of the waves, is it brings new creative capacity.
Exactly.
And respective downloading. So you think it is just a relationship to the waves, that we don't have entities as such that we might know as dragons?
That's what I think. That's all I have seen. Yeah.
Thank you. Interesting question. So that was that, and then there's another comment here which says, really helpful insight into the resistance within us to changing the influence of the 6th and the 7th waves, both in ourselves and how we encounter these in others. So yeah, I think there's a lot there. And then Serge has said, Carl, concerning toad medicine, are you aware of the works done by Dr. Octavio Rettig?
No, but I'm certainly aware of toad medicine, and I just recently saw this study coming out of the University of Maastricht in the Netherlands that, it just, I would say, praises the whole procedure, and it's a very helpful process. That's what I've seen, and it's again a case of a reputable scientific study that shows the same kind of results, and this might be actually one of the most powerful psychedelic tools there is.
Oh wow, then that would be. Do you mention it in your book? Is there some coverage of that at all? Not at all.
No, I hadn't read that article when the book was written.
Okay, then that's, I think, something that we can follow up with ourselves. Can I just ask if there's anybody in the community, if you have any additional questions? Oh, there's one. Do you think, Carl, that 2030 will be a great shift in life as we see it now?
Yeah, well, great and great. I think that I have some hope for that time. I do expect that the time until 2031, I think that will remain difficult. Uh, I mean, on the level of the planet, so to speak. Uh, um, and I consider it difficult at this time. And and I think it will. The difficulties might even increase. Um, but in 2031, you know, I do think there will be a return to more global collaboration. For one thing, I think there will be more of a balance between the East and the West, uh, and meaning that the West will probably go down in this time period, and its influence. Um, and also, you know, then by then the ninth wave will have been active for 20 years, and the people will be coming up on the stage of humanity that are more in tune with this with it, what is the higher destiny of humanity, I would say, a return to unity consciousness. How this will manifest, I don't know, and probably we don't know. But the Mayan way of approaching these things is to look at these underlying waves, and the reason they wrote an inscription in the Tortuguero monument 1300 years ago about what would happen in our own time is that they were not looking at the physical manifestations. They were looking at the underlying quantum field and how that would change. And that's all I think we can. I think there are reasons to be hopeful at that the world will be more loving and more empathic and more collaborating at that time. And yet I also think that the until that time it would be a lot of resistance for anyone working towards a unity consciousness and creating a world of love.
Thank you. So that's what we have to learn, is to unfold everything and to just keep being love.
Yeah.
It's just the heart is the most important thing.
Yeah.
To heal and to keep unfolding. And that's, I think that's something that's so key for the ninth wave, is we don't know how it's going to unfold within the current infrastructure and the other influences of our world culture, of our world paradigms. We don't know what's going to facilitate the crisis that's going to want individuals to take that next step forward on their own journey. So we can only do as much as we can and fulfill our purpose and piece of the puzzle, as you said earlier. Cole, I just want to say thank you so much. I don't know if you can see the chat room. There's some lovely comments coming in. There's
thank you.
Thanks from everybody in the community. They have just so enjoyed.
Thank you. It's been wonderful. I love your community. Thank you.
Thank you, Cole. I hope, is there anything else that you would like to offer that we perhaps didn't cover as part of the process?
No, I think we covered good things.
Okay. Then I really appreciate, thank you so much for your time, Cole. I hope that maybe in the future there may be another opportunity.
Hope so too. I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Cole. Thank you, everybody. And God bless. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the Super Bowl. I'm not watching it.
No. I won't either. Not my cup of tea.